During my research, I found out a great deal of information in regards to domestic terrorism and the different aspects associated with domestic terrorism. I got to learn the FBI's definition of domestic terrorism and was able to apply their definition to two different cases of domestic terrorism. The FBI's definition of domestic terrorism means which activities with the following characteristics involves acts dangerous to human life that violate federal or state law, appear intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion, or to affect the conduct of a government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping, and occur primarily within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. The following case is about the domestic terrorist attack that occurred during the Boston Marathon. The Boston Marathon bombings and subsequent related shootings were a series of attacks and incidents which began on April 15, 2013, when two pressure cooker bombs exploded during the Boston Marathon at 2:49 p.m., killing 3 people and injuring an estimated 264 others. The bombs exploded about 12 seconds and 210 yards apart near the finish line on Bolstern Street. On this tragic day, a homegrown terrorist cell with strong Islamic ties exploded 2 bombs, killing Americans on Patriots' Day. When applying the FBI's definition of domestic terrorism, I see how and why the case was considered a domestic terrorism case. The Boston Marathon bombing meets the criteria of a domestic terrorist attack. The following case dealing with the Baptist church bombing. On September 15th, a bomb exploded before Sunday morning services on the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, a church with a predominantly black congregation that served as a meeting place for civil rights leaders. 4 young girls were killed and many others injured. Outrage over the incident and the violent clash between protesters and police that followed helped draw national attention to the hard-fought, often dangerous struggle for civil rights for African Americans. When looking at the FBI's definition of terrorism and comparing it to the Baptist church bombings, you see the definition coincides with the FBI's definition. Looking at the different aspects of domestic terrorism, you see how the church bombings is a perfect example of domestic terrorism. During my research in these 2 domestic terrorist cases, I saw how both cases unveiled. In research, we looked at different responses of law enforcement. In both cases, there was a lot of controversy in the church bombings. A church bomb went off and an all-white police force moved into action, proclaimed Charles Morgan, Jr. at the Birmingham Young Men's Business Club. Law enforcement's response was timely and equal to any other response time. Some believe since it was blacks, law enforcement didn't care as much compared to the Boston Marathon attacks. Some different changes and shortcomings came from the attack. Law enforcement response was quick and actually brought a firefight and a statewide manhunt for the terrorists. The Homeland Security Act was passed after 9/11, and we had a domestic terrorism team in place for many years. The police force was shocked the homegrown terrorists successfully killed Americans even after all the terrorism countermeasures. Law enforcement changes after the attack was to try to stop attacks before they occur effectively. More screening and infiltrating on Americans' privacy acts occurred after the event to catch info on these events before they happen. After these 2 awful domestic terrorist attacks, some changes came after. After the Boston Marathon terrorist attack, changes were fast and aggressive. The event changed society greatly because it brought back the fear that we felt at 9/11. The many years of war we fought and still were attacked on our homeland. Many Americans felt fear, and it brought back anger to keep fighting the evil terrorist groups. After the church terrorist attack, the changes to society were major and happened swiftly. The event changed society partly due to the actively ongoing civil rights movement. The bombings played the most terrible role in the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King claimed the governor of the state. This caused controversy among blacks and whites across the U.S. During my research on domestic terrorism throughout the class, I learned a lot about different aspects dealing with the complex world we live in. Domestic terrorism is real and very dangerous. We have to continue studying and trying to combat this ever-changing threat.